Welcome to Bariatric Business Accelerator, the podcast created for busy weight loss practitioners and their teams who want to systematize, simplify, and accelerate the growth of their new or existing weight loss practice. I'm Carol Clark, your host, and I appreciate you for being here. And thank you for subscribing and sharing it with anyone else who may benefit from the podcast. And today we're talking about a very important topic that I've been doing with all of my clients, and that's our year-end review. Some clients are new with me. This is a total eye-opener for them. Other clients have been with me for years, and we are in more of a cadence in terms of making this happen. But before we set goals for the next year or goals for the next quarter or for the next month, before we do any of that planning, we want to do a year-end review or a quarter review, wherever you are in your current fiscal year. So right now we are at the end of 2024 and we are looking at a year-end review. So what does that look like? Before I get to that, I guess I want to say some of the reasons why we're looking at that is perhaps we've had a really great year and we want to analyze how did that happen, dissect it a little bit, see what made the biggest impact for you. Perhaps this year has not been like other years. It's been a bit disappointing. I know we've gone through all the stats and some webinars that I've recently created, but bariatric surgeries are down a little over 26% for many practices, not all. Many of my practices that I work with have at least maintained their volume, but there are some things that have gone down. So maybe your year went great, maybe your year didn't go as planned, and we need to dissect that as well. Other topics for right now is the decision whether or not to perhaps give bonuses to your staff, what you're going to do from a year-end tax check to make sure that you are up to date on paying taxes and you don't have a huge surprise when you file your business taxes or personal taxes. All those things play into the dire need for a year-end review. I like to do this more frequently, but at least at the end of the year. So what does that look like? What that looks like is taking a look at your books. So you have typically your billing collection system, your EMR, wherever you're collecting all that from, and then you have your accounting software. So those two need to intersect, and we need to be able to look at trends and what's going on. We also look at your AR if you're an insurance-based practice, but more importantly, we're looking at the profit and loss specifically for each one of your cost centers. You may say, Carol, I just look at the profit and loss for my practice. Well, if you only have one particular service, one particular provider, that may work fine. But for most practices or many practices, they have more than one provider. We need to see if each one is profitable. They also may have more than one revenue stream. So perhaps it's bariatric surgery, perhaps it's medical weight loss, it might be aesthetics, it might be hormone replacement, it might be some IV therapy. There are lots of different things that I work with practices on. So you may have more than one cost center. So we do want to split out the revenue and the expenses for those cost centers because sometimes you may have the vision or the illusion that one particular cost center is really robust in supporting itself and others. And when we get to the end of the line and we take a look at the numbers, perhaps it's not. Now, that can be okay if it is a lead generation for perhaps some of your other services, and so it brings in revenue down the line. But in and of itself, it's something that needs to be looked at. Does it need to continue? Do we need to modify it in some way? I was just doing this yesterday with a practice who has an add-on service that they really felt was bringing them a lot of money. And this past year, they had a change in staffing and that volume really went down. And when we looked at the profitability, this is a newer practice I work with, when we looked at the profitability from the year before, this particular surgeon thought that it was bringing in a lot of money. And at the end of the day, when we looked at the revenue and the expenses, which includes basically the team that's responsible for doing that, any supplies, and then a little bit of overhead, it was actually losing money. So it ended up being one of those things that was a good thing that it was not there. But we take a look at each cost center by provider or by cost center service line, and we look at, is it profitable? And if it's not, we'll end up deep diving into why it's not profitable and taking a look at all the different things that contribute to that. We also look at your revenue year over year, your accounts receivable year over year, how that's changed, your expenses year over year, and we also want to look at what has changed and what was the biggest reason for that, and has it lent you a return on your investments, particularly with any marketing endeavors that you had or any software changes that you had. Sometimes we can layer things where we're paying for things more than once. But anyhow, your year-end review, particularly by cost center, can be a huge eye-opener into what may need to change for your goal setting for the next year. We'll get into that in another podcast because that's an exciting topic as well, but we want to have accurate data moving forward. And that doesn't mean if you are experiencing not the same profit margin this year that you did last year, doesn't mean that that's doom and gloom. It means that we have some work to do. It means that we have to figure out how we're going to modify that, how we're going to make that better. And nobody better to do that than you and your team. And I love guiding people through that. So anyhow, this year, before you set goals for next year and just determine those, we really do want to look at your financial situation, making sure that your books are set up, that you are actually tracking it month to month. You can see the trends that are occurring. You can address them before they become a problem. That is really important. And actually, at the end of the day, gives you peace of mind because it gives you accurate data to make really strategic decisions moving forward. So I hope you're looking at your books. I'm sure you are. If you want to have any help with that or any templates or you're curious about that, reach out to me. You can always get lots of free resources on this as well at my website, weightlosspracticebuilder.com. And like I say, we review these numbers at the end of the year. But to tell you the truth, for the practices I work with on a regular basis that I do private consulting, and even some of those in membership, we're actually looking at key metrics every single month. And we're changing strategy as we go along to make sure that we are helping to support the goals that they've set and not wait till the last minute and realize that we are way off the mark and what are we going to do now. So that's the importance of a year-end review, and I hope you're doing that. I know you can find it extremely valuable. It's also really valuable for your accountant that you're working with, and it helps to make better decisions moving forward. So at the end of the day, let's make sure that's happening in your practice, and I appreciate you for being here. Take care.